All righty, folks, back for episode 26 with Shawn Fultz and no Chris Mace, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But first, let's jump to the bio on Shawn, who serves as the CTO at Mace Innovations, the Salt Lake City area software firm focused on automation tools for the mortgage and financial services industry. In this role, he leads the architecture and delivery of technology solutions designed to save mortgage organizations both time and cost. Prior to his current position, Shawn worked his way up through software engineering roles at the same company. He's based in Charleston, South Carolina. His technical domain spans back-end systems, web development, database technologies, underpinned by a solid foundation in .NET, SQL, and cloud environments. Shawn, that was entirely made up by GPT. How did it do?
Not bad.
Not bad. Not bad. Yeah. Any inconsistencies in there? To find out like you don't live in South Carolina.
No, that was accurate. Yeah,
that one is accurate. All right, so Shawn, the first question I like to ask everybody. Oh wait, first of all, just for anybody who's watching, and he told me that we could talk about this. Chris is not here today. Chris's wife gave birth to their new son last week. There were some complications, and he was in the NICU, but things are looking up. So well wishes to Chris and his family. Okay, so Shawn, what did you want to be when you grew up? Because I'm sure as hell it wasn't CTO for Mace Innovations.
No, that wasn't on the list. I don't know, like growing up, it definitely in the cars, but I wouldn't, I think there's like some reels and stuff. Like as a kid, I would take things apart, all sorts of electronics, like VCR, like anything.
Oh, interesting.
And even way back with the original Xbox, I got into modding them, right? So you'd have to solder some wires. So anyways, I was very into computers, and then they had this rep from DeVry come to like our high school and was like, hey, we got all these different degrees or whatever. And I was like, okay, electronic engineering technology, EET. I was like, that's just a no-brainer. So I'm going to go do that. So I'm originally from Ohio, lived in this small little town.
Whereabouts?
River. It's near Marietta, Ohio.
Okay.
So right on the Ohio River. First settlement in the Northwest Territory, I think, too. But anyways, moved to Columbus. Started going to school, got my degree. It was a lot. Probably about halfway, 3/4 of the way in, I was like, yeah, I don't like this. This isn't for me. It's a lot of assembly language, like low-level microprocessors, learning all about the original Intel, processors, building circuits, all that good stuff. And I finished my degree, but during the time I was working for a company. It was actually a call center company that was headquartered in Columbus. Because fun fact, they used to sell Pitney Bowes postage meters way back in the day in high school on the phones in a call center. So yeah, but anyways, I went to work for them. Then when I graduated, I moved into their development department, and just kind of fell in love with right. development. But I mean, we do a little bit, classes in college and stuff, but right. I was really interested in that until I got out into the real world. And
is DeVry still around?
That is a good question.
Because I think so. I don't. PK, do you even know what DeVry is?
Yes.
I don't know if you're old enough. I don't know if you're old enough.
I lost him when he said postage something.
Like those were the commercials. Like if you wanted to go into like IT, that was where you went. Like at least when I was a kid, like that was like kind of the whole thing. I mean, that was you like computers? Come to DeVry, right?
It's the MIT of the Midwest.
I don't know if I would go that far, but
I don't know if I go that far. But it was sort of like, hey, you weren't necessarily bound for like normal college. Like, do you want a job in infrastructure systems or whatever? I mean, I forget exactly what all the offerings.
Yeah, they also touted like 90+% placement, after, going through the program, which they, later got in trouble for. Those weren't exactly.
Oh, did they?
But
Yeah,
that's
there
why
were a
I'm not
lot of
sure.
those.
Like I haven't kept up on it, but yeah, they were in the news. They're
But that was all their ads were like, you know, come to DeVry, and you only like you didn't take any base classes, right? So like you only took, right? Didn't you just take classes in your
for the
field?
most part. For the most part, it was very like basic. Then it was mostly core. There's a lot of math because like it's fascinating circuit design and all that stuff is very, very high level math to design
Right.
circuits, transistors, like all that good stuff. But yeah, so it was mainly stuff that I was interested in. So I realized I wanted to build software instead of circuits and
Circuits,
electronics.
So
I feel like software had like a resurgence, and then like now hardware is like coming back up.
Yeah.
that is true. Being a chip designer right now is a really excellent thing to be. There's no question about that. So how did you fall into mortgage tech?
So over the years, fast forward from call it my first development job, using more procedural based Box Pro. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that, or you can Google it. Some old language, and they were basically migrating off of that into C#.net, and they hired some consultants to come in and learned a lot, and that's where I kind of started, with C#.net. Then worked at a variety of places over the years, different verticals, project man. I mean, I got linked it. Like it was all sorts of stuff, even timing for like triathlons and like I've done so many different, or worked at so many different, kind of like fields or niches that, yeah. But to lead me to Mace Innovations, I was working at a mortgage company in Ohio, and they're like, "Hey, we want to buy this thing from this guy named Mace, and want you to take a look at it, see if we should buy it. Like, is it vaporware? Whatever."
Right. Yeah.
So that's how Mace and I met. So I took a look. I mean, we ended up buying it. But at the time, I was head of product and IT development at that company. So, but that's how we met.
And Mace just stole you away. He sold the product to him, then stole you away. Is that
so many? Yeah, down the road, essentially. So, yeah, that's basically, that summarizes it.
they got money and their employees? Way to go, Mace.
Too bad he's not on
So
here
now,
to defend himself. But
how long have you and Mace been together?
coming up on 9 years, it's kind of full-time partners with Mace and stuff. Probably knew him a couple years, but like before that, maybe year and a half. So
Nice.
Has he always been the same?
Yeah. I don't think much changed. So
No.
no.
There you go. Mace, and I love the fact Mace like handles everything with humor. Like over the weekend where it was like, things were, I was just worried.
Choppy.
I was worried for him, and he's like cracking jokes about it. He's like, I don't know what else to do, man. And I was like, all right. Like, I forget what the one joke was, but like I laughed at it, and I like replied back, and I was like, I feel really bad that I just laughed at that joke, but I did laugh.
I wanted to send a joke too, but then I was like, yeah, it feels like a little insensitive to do so.
So Shawn, let's talk about Mace Innovations. I mean, I think a lot of people on LinkedIn, know you and Chris and hear Mace Innovations. I mean, obviously, Chris is here every single week for the most part. But I don't know how many people actually know what it is that you guys do.
That's a good question. And over the last, a lot of years, it's there's some fundamentals, and that things have changed. We built a lot of different, products, primarily, integrations into ICE or the Encompass platform, right? We had some really unique stuff, back before their API, like their newest, version, what you guys see today and know. We had to do everything in SDK and get that to scale for some pretty, larger folks, which was really pretty fascinating. But you know, I've been kind of through there, like from when they first released some of their first, you know, like API endpoints and stuff like that, and we're trying to build out that infrastructure all those years ago. So we had some, you know, some product SDK type stuff, and then once they started releasing that, we shifted, you know, anything we had built, most of it got converted, or if it was possible to use their new REST API tech, you know, we did that from the beginning, even when it was in its really early stages, which was interesting. But yeah, we have a variety of tools. Like you can go to our website. We have a workflow, you know, product. I'd say one of the more interesting ones that I built all those, you know, years ago was our product, like our bulk updater product. It's not that, you know, it's not that technical of a product, but it allows companies, mortgage companies, to bulk update data inside of Encompass. So a lot of it's used for like HMDA or call reporting. You know, it's unfortunate Mace isn't on here, because I would say, like, I learned a lot about mortgage in this period of time, but yeah, they use it for so many different things. But we have that. We have some document import products. We had a big integration with a, you know, like a large point of sale company. So, but I would say when I mentioned fundamentals, we basically specialize in integrations. Like at the end of the day, like some have front end, some don't. But we got really good, and a lot of my experience prior to Mace Innovations and prior to working at the mortgage company was just integrating systems, like various systems for years and years, with like on various different tech stacks.
Okay, I think Sean's underselling himself here.
So please,
From what, yeah, from what I've seen, they can do a lot more than integrations, and we have a chat on Slack. Andrew, you're in it. You're just not active. But we talk about all the AI stuff.
I got too many fucking channels. I got too much stuff I got to keep track of.
But these guys have been, you know, playing around with these AI tools for 18 months, maybe more at this point.
Yeah.
But Sean is like one of the most active peoples in that chat. Like I'll drop a link in there and Sean will actually, like, I'm just sharing it because I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. And Sean will actually go and use it and then like figure out what are all the edge cases with it, and then come back with like, oh, I built this and this, and like these are the flaws. How are you guys figuring this out? And I'm just like, I don't know. I'm just sharing the stuff. And so Sean's really super hands
Really, I
on.
need to pay more attention to that channel.
You do.
That channel,
I'm not the engineer though, so
yeah. I mean, there's some interesting stuff that we come across all the time that's non-technical too.
yeah, it's really cool. There's a lot of smart folks in there. I even have I don't know, a couple companies back, had a really good mentor, Ray. Worked with him. It was in the call center space, and he's part of it. He's an owner. He's got a new you know, a new thing going now too. But either way, it's all different verticals. It's not all just, you know, mortgage folks with AI, but it is, you know, AI doing it right, or AI DIR.
it's mostly not mortgage folks that are in that, correct?
Yeah, I would say
Right.
this. Yeah, I would say it's probably more non, but it's really neat to have a lot of, you know, these folks that are, you know, like following along in like their journey with, you know, using AI. How the heck do you make this stuff work so it's not just, you know.
So okay, so let's hop into my favorite topic. I'm kidding. Okay, so vibe coding versus what you do. I forget exactly how Mace put it in the text, right? But like, I think there's like engineers who code with AI, and then there's vibe coding, and they're very, very. I would say those are actually two completely different things, right? So Andrew sitting down and building a CRM in Lovable is vibe coding, right? Is that what it's called? Lovable? I think that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that one of them? Okay.
Yeah, that's one of them.
Right. And it's not going to scale, and the backend, you know, architecture is probably garbage. It probably has no security controls. anything of that nature. So anyways, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't you explain, I guess, like what are the limitations you've seen on those platforms, and then like some of the other stuff that you're doing as well.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting. I think sites, if you put them in kind of the category of vibe coding, which I do agree, like Lovable, there's like Bolt.new, there's a handful of them right now. You go and you just start chatting, it starts creating web pages, and they've beefed it up a little bit. It has some like Supabase or database integration stuff now. A lot of times with those, when you first start, they'll create really nice, good looking, like what I consider mock-ups. You've got buttons, you've got styles, like they look badass. But you find this even too with other tools that are not those, that a lot of times the AI, it'll create very nice looking web pages, but behind the scenes it's kind of like mock data. And where it gets really interesting is like, okay, well, how do you take that, propagate it to the database, make sure everything's secure, like all the different layers, right? I kind of think of that as like the front end, which is fine, for certain things. And also some of our projects, we'll tell folks, go to Lovable, like create your project, kind of get the UI, and kind of just focus on that. And then on some of them, like I can take it from there and kind of put it into our tools and in our suite, and actually build it out into a scalable web application. So I think they're good. They have a purpose for now, like in this. But I think the way that they probably system prompt and engineered on their side is more for the visual part of it, and not as much the kind of middle layer, API layer, or backend database.
Right. So
for more like prototyping.
Yeah, and it's really good at that, honestly. Like I said, it saves time, so you think of me as a developer. Andrew wants a CRM. Like, I don't know what's in his head. Like, how's he want it to look? Like, what colors? Is he want to use orange? Like, like I have my personal preferences and stuff like that. But yeah, it's really helped like speed up some projects too, because then at least you have something to start with, and you're not just making all those decisions and showing it to a customer or user, and they're like, I don't like this. So yeah, so some you can take from there.
And customers suck at writing user stories, right?
Yeah, well, that's where it really gets that's really between like user stories and like how the application should function. Gets like, you can have buttons, you can have dashboards, make things look pretty, but like, how do you want it to work when you're adding new records into the CRM? Like, what are the data objects? Like, what are, are you going to have API, points? Are there reoccurring cron jobs? Like, are there workflows that, need to happen when things are triggered? It's just like the whole layer down. They do a good job on the front side, but yeah, but then, there's AI tools that we use, and I mean, every single day to kind of do that, or those other layers.
Well, because my concern, and the reason I bring up the vibe coding, and then I want to hear about what you guys use, from your day to day. But like I've constantly heard this, what I think is a fairly dangerous reoccurring theme, particularly on LinkedIn, of this idea that like, oh, we just don't need engineers anymore, and I'm just going to build some custom GPTs and an app in Lovable, and I'm just going to run my company, using all of that. And it just blows my mind that there are people who actually think they can do that, when you talk about how difficult it is to actually build like real enterprise applications that are safe and secure and scalable.
Yeah, it depends on the complexity of what I think, like the custom GPTs, Chat GPT, all those, like, they have their place, right? Like, you can automate certain things. You know, go pull data from somewhere and send it to you, you know, via email every morning, so you have your reports and certain things. So I think they have their place. I would say most companies wouldn't be able to automate, or, you know, to the point that they wouldn't need some sort of engineer, because one of the things, you know, it may, whether you're a business person or whatever the problem you're trying to automate or save for, like, it always seems so much simpler on the surface than it does when you actually get into the weeds, the edge cases, like all the nuance that, you know, engineers are, you know, you're used to. Something you think might be as simple as, you know, adding some records to a CRM can, depending
Have
on,
so many like edge cases.
yeah, and how you want to tie things together. Yeah, there's a lot of different levels to it, but I will say, what we do and what I do, it was interesting, just the quick story on it. So, 18 some months ago, Mace was like, hey, like, he had been telling me about AI, and, you know, prior to that, like, my whole career, almost 20 years, you know, no AI, right? Like, for development, I guess you just, you know, it's funny to say now, the hard way. But he was like, hey, go check out this site, bolt.new. And I was like, okay, whatever. Got around to it in a day or two. And it's, you know, very similar to Lovable, if everybody's familiar with that. But it's just like a light bulb went off, that it was like, holy crap, okay, like, it can build React stuff, it can build, you know, but I was like, well, what else can it do? So then I kept, you know, exploring and stuff, and, you know, there's different, you know, plugins and stuff for like Visual Studio Code. There's one like called Klein, Rue Code. There's a bunch of these other things that'll kind of like, okay, you have your own code base. So if you have existing stuff, which most everybody does, like, you can have it interact with that, you know, ask it questions, you know, modify. So I started kind of there, and what that allowed me to do, because I got really in the weeds with it. So I didn't want to just, like, you know, sit there and like type and it's like, okay, it didn't do that right, or like it did this good and whatever. So I went multiple layers down into, like, you know, the whole context engineering, managing basically memory, and a whole other things to actually understand, like, how it was working, you know, kind of behind the scenes, and what are some things you can do to, you know, make it more accurate. One of the biggest frustrations, you know, you have a context window of, what is Anthropic's or Claude Code? I think it's 200K. You know, Google's is like whichever version, you know, or model your LLM you're using. I think they have, you know, they're up to 1 million. For some of them, but the whole thing is like, you know, you spend this time building something or having it automate something, and you get it finally to the place you want to work, or where it's working, and then, you know, start a new task, or, you know, say next day come in, and it has no context of those hours of work that you just put in for all of that, or it makes some modification because it doesn't remember a thing that it did, you know, 2 weeks ago. Right. So went on a lot of paths and tried a lot of different, you know, things for basically context. They call it, the term is context engineering, but it's really Mongo. One of the engineers at Mongo and a few other places had a really good explanation, but it's basically, how do you, you know, how do you give it, you know, memory, so that whenever you're working on the new thing and all these things over, you know, say a month. I have some projects that, you know, 6 months of AI coding, you know, how does it know every single thing? They've grown, you know, to be very complex pieces of software. They're not just, you know, a website with some buttons. So yeah, like Pramod was mentioning in that channel, it's a lot of folks doing the same thing. Like, they're trying to figure it out, and somebody will like, hey, I found this thing. Hey, I found that thing. I go try it. You know, like, figure out how these things work, to the point that we're at now, where I have a very, like, reliable, effective kind of system based on, like, the tool set. But the tool set, you know, Anthropic, Claude, whether you're using the model is just one thing. It's like all the things you can plug into it and stuff so that you can actually like code complex things or have them be able to make changes to complex, like say existing tech that we have.
There you go. So the follow-up question is do you think Lovable has or tools similar to it, like, will, as they continue to increase, do you think they'll ever get to the point where you could literally actually build a secure enterprise grade piece of software through it? Or is there just too much edge cases and too many things to be able to, or to have to worry about?
I think they'll probably get there.
Yeah. How long?
It'll be a while though.
It'll be a while. Everything is like, I think it was 2 months or 3 months difference for the time I first used like Lovable just for some, hacking around, like, just trying to do some things, to the last time, I think it was a week or so ago. Yeah, it was a week ago. I was like, holy crap. Like they really, because they didn't used to have any database integration, right? You just build in your front end. They bolted that on, which we do use for some projects. Supabase, definitely highly recommend them. But then, other things, we have our own AWS infrastructure, and it's, but I do think they'll get there. I'm not sure how long. Like things, that's part of what makes it fun and exciting too, is that whether it's them or anyone else, like there's so many new things coming out like every day.
Are we gonna make a bet here?
What?
How soon till one of these things can make like a fully production grade secure?
Everybody overestimates the short term and underestimates the long term. So I'm going to go out and say it'll be like 5 years at least.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
That's
5 years.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm not the expert on this one. The one thing that I did hear this story, I don't know if you guys heard this story. There was allegedly somebody, because a lot of these things are usage based, right? So like you still got to pay for tokens, you still got to pay for AWS storage, like all these things, right? So there was a story that apparently someone like vibe coded some platform, and there was something, I can't remember the exact, but basically he woke up the next morning and had like a $50,000 bill because it was there was something that was just running in the background like constantly, and like I guess it all got worked out like with the company or whatever, but like, I mean, that's the other risk you run when you don't actually understand how these things work and how they talk to one another, right? Like I've said it ever since AI or generative AI kind of came on the scene, which is just because Home Depot sells saws doesn't mean I'm a finished carpenter, right? Like these are tools, but like, again, I don't know anything about engineering. I mean, a little bit, but generally speaking, right? So it's like, I can't do anything with these tools, right? Like Sora. I mean, if anybody uses Sora, this is the perfect example. Like it's all terrible, right? Because, and I don't come up with anything creative to use on Sora. I'm not a creative person. Like that's just not something in my nature. So that's why I'm like, some of these tools, they'll get better and better, but is it even possible for them to ever get to the point? Unless on the fly, you can just update and launch features in 15 seconds. But
I don't think, based on, like, if you use Lovable as an example, based on their price point and what I know from the things that we've built over the last 10 months, it's impossible to build that level of scale with what they charge for it. Now they can do like usage-based things, but you're going to have just a markup, most likely, in addition to whatever the Anthropic, whatever the model.
Reasonable, yeah.
Yeah, like so for us, and outside, so mainly using Claude Code now for development. I have had or used Gemini's one of their models a while back just because of the 1 million context window, but it was more so to refactor code that got sloppy because of certain things that I wasn't, like necessarily like paying attention to for a period of time. So now there's like, in kind of Claude Code 2, they have the concept of rules, agents, skills, right? So what I spend a lot of time when I, say like, it's not just, vibe coding. Any engineer, like if you spend the time creating your context files and your rules, in Claude, it's the claude.md, which is your markdown file. It's kind of like the high level, like, this is what you should do, this is what you can't do, never do this, or do, whatever you want. But for some projects, days of continually like updating them and improving them so I get the output, that I want, and it doesn't make the same mistakes again, because that's another big thing. If you don't, like, as you go along, if say good use case for that would be like on some of the things I've been working on, even with the latest version of Claude, the latest models, all that stuff, if it's working in existing code base and you say, well, pop an alert to the user in the web page, it wants to use the browser alert. Even though it has modals styled the way that you want them, all that stuff throughout the existing code base, it will just default sometimes to the easiest thing or the thing that it knows the best. But if you spend time working on your rules, your basic
guiding it,
and continuing to do that too. Like, so when you build new features, there's a really cool, I don't know that you can do links in here, but it's called CCPM. It's a GitHub open source like repo that's kind of like a thing to kind of bolt on to Claude Code. And what it does, though, whether you use its features, it's basically like the whole concept of project management, creating epics, sprint, like the whole thing you would do in a traditional, like, say, larger software company. But what it's really good at, even if you don't use those features, is continually keeping an update of context and changes so that whenever you, say you come back in to load it, you can load all that up and you're basically, in a good spot. So I would say for most of the projects now that I'm using Claude Code for to build things, one shot, like features, bug fixes, I mean, it's like over 90%. Whereas like before, if I would like rewind, 8 months, 10 months ago when I started with some of these tools, now the models have gotten better too, right? And the tooling,
Right.
Claude Code wasn't, I don't know about 10 months ago, but either way, like the tooling has changed, the models have gotten better, but for most things, I can just kind of let it run. You still have to, a lot of times, kind of talk more or understand the engineering side of it to create a prompt so that it can do that. I don't know what that would be like if, say I was like, okay, hey, Andrew, or I'm gonna leave Pramod out of it because he's a software guy. But like, just to have a user just like, okay, I want the web page to do whatever.
He's not. You know that, right? He's not a software guy. Everybody thinks
More-
that is a software guy.
Well, I know some of the stuff he shares on AIDR, and I know he keeps up to date very well on
an ex Goldman analyst.
Yeah. But
Andrew's jealous.
like
He doesn't have the Indian allegations.
You said it, not me, buddy. Sorry, Shawn. Go ahead. But yeah.
So it's not. I think maybe where some people could say, well, it's it's just not as good. As like if I had to do it myself, right? I'm an engineer. Like go build it. If you spend the time kind of engineering, it sounds weird to say, but like engineering, like the context, the prompt, like your rule, like actually like, building that up over time for that's very complex. It can be very good. But if you don't spend any time and you just, download Claude Code or you like use Klein, whatever the thing is, whatever the model is, doesn't matter. And all you want to do is come in and like just have it be good on day one. Well, it's going to be okay. It's not, keep getting better. But if you want to do it across like multiple code bases, projects, all that stuff. You have to spend the time kind of engineering that part too.
Right. Yeah. No, it makes sense. So out of curiosity, is the reason you use Claude Code over like Cursor or Devin or one of those others? Like, is it just better, or is there other features, or?
I so far, I think it's just better. A lot of it's to do with the models, and and more so all those things that I just mentioned about like engineering kind of the context. Like they have a pretty nifty way to do that. Like I had tried, using I had used Windsurf. I've tried I've tried all of them, over the months, and Claude Code is where I'm currently at. That may change, but there's just so many things that I like, and actually like most of those things, like the Windsurf, like all those are just like layers on top of Visual Studio Code, or like plugins and extensions for it, which I probably Ruclode, which is just a fork of Klein. Oh, wait, is it Klein? I forget.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it was basically just like they took that product and forked it and just started adding a bunch of cool stuff that they didn't want in the main thing. But that's also where I like learned, like, part of their Discord channel, like looking at the features and how things work and how other users, were trying to figure out all this stuff. Code base indexing. Like I've tried so many different things, and Claude Code just has more of it out of the box. And I still can use Visual Studio. Well, you don't have to, but I just have a terminal open in Visual Studio and run Claude Code from there, and you can see it like edit the files and everything. So I think it's just like the underlying feature set is a bit stronger, or I've had enough success that I haven't went looking again back at like Windsurf, Cursor, like all those other tools. It's so good with kind of my system and everything that I built that so far I don't have a reason to kind of go back and try those out again.
And at some point in time, like you just have to pick a horse. You know what
Well,
I mean?
that's it,
You
like,
just can't keep going back and like retrying and retrying and retrying. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
like with the projects and the stuff we're taking on now, like there's only so much time in the day to build the software that, and do all those things. Like it's almost like kind of housekeeping things, like context stuff to have it keep up with that. Yeah, I find it's a struggle to go and keep up with all the latest and greatest, and actually try them. Like actually try to use it to like really test it, not just like, oh, hey, I want to create a new website, let me just type in a prompt. Like that's not real world to me. Real world is like editing existing APIs, code bases, like adding features to software that's in production, that's been coded with these tools 100%. So
Right.
yeah. Also, I should mention one of the things, possibly if anybody's listening, what's interesting is that whether it was any of those tools we just mentioned, Claude Code, Rook, like whatever it was, especially with TypeScript, it seems to like, I have I'm on a Windows laptop now, just constant mistakes and errors between what I think the LLMs are trained with, between like Bash, like Linux, like commands, and Windows, like for PowerShell or PowerScript. But I had this idea. I'm like, okay, well, let me just create like a Ubuntu Linux VM, to just kind of test this out on my laptop that's not too powerful. Holy cow. Way less tokens, way less mistakes,
Really?
Yeah. So right now, kind of my dev environment, we actually, Mace allowed me to build kind of like it's a dev server. But I have, I think, 7 different VMs. I have every project that we or customer that we have, they're on separate virtual machines. It's actually sitting down here, but apartment gets kind of warm at times. But anyway, so every project that I have too is isolated, so they're their own separate instance with like backups and all. This is for development, mind you, not production where we host it, but just for development, I have a Proxmox server with a bunch. Like I said, I think it's 8 or 9 different VMs for each kind of customer or project, that everything for their specific like kind of stack and everything for them is all in one place, but it also allows me to, have like multiple things going at the same time. And then also, it's really interesting. Claude Code and some of these tools, I'm doing a little analysis. I'm not really finished yet, but it's interesting how much CPU they actually use, even though the models and everything are running on their side. So, yeah, I have a large dev, server, so I can,
Estimate.
yeah, and there's some really cool things too to track, like dev time, that things like you're actually working and they're idle. And I've built kind of out like a whole setup, and I've had it now 6 months, no more. But that's what I use. Like, I have my laptop that I'm on here, but I'm remoted into my dev server for each project, depending on what it is I'm working on. But also it allows you to not, like, all that stuff I was mentioning about engineering context files, all that stuff. Every project, since it's its own instance, like, you're not like mixing any of that, so it's not like one global like kind of config file. So every project or software solution has its own unique setup depending on what it is.
Right.
Shawn, you're on the engineering side, but you've also been inside mortgage companies. So I'm sure, like, I know Andrew gets questions like this all the time. I've got a couple questions. Chris, I'm sure, fields these questions from folks in the industry. But there's a lot of like non-technical people that are trying to figure out how to make use of all the stuff that's going on and keep up with it. I guess, like, how should they be thinking about just kind of like making sense of all the changes that are happening, but also like how do you approach it in a reasonable or like with sanity?
Yeah, I think you start small, right? Step one, download any of these tools we talked about. Download Claude Code, or even if you're not an engineer, you can still go download it and try these tools for yourself. Even if you're never gonna like build something, but just to get an idea of what the heck everybody's talking about, right? So even if you're a business, you're download them. Like, just try it. Like, most of them give you a little bit of credits and stuff for free, but when people start coming to you and like saying certain things, like, I think it'd be good to just give it a try, even if it's you're not going to technically build it,
something.
but you'll get more familiar with the terminology and what us crazy dev folks are saying. I think that's one good way. But then also, we talked about like AI and coding and like building building like software solutions, right? Well, it's sometimes like I had to reprogram my brain that like I can use that for a ton of different things. Like, some examples, for example, you can create or use it to create tools to do certain things. Like, for example, AWS, right? We have a lot of infrastructure on AWS. We built a ton of different proof of concepts, that have gotten like shells. Some things are still like, but you start looking at your AWS phone, you're like, oh crap, like we're ticking back up there, like more than we were, 6 months ago. So using Claude Code, create a script, it'll go through and like, you have to give it access, keep it in an isolated way. But you can have it analyze your infrastructure, like what are you using, what are you not. You can look through all the logs. So I went through this exercise actually this past week, a couple $1,000s a month, and saved. And
Go.
the interesting part is that we have some legacy kind of Windows servers out there, and it was able to look at CPU utilization and realize that it can be stepped down, like a tier, because as we're migrating off of some of our legacy stuff onto newer tech, like, it's interesting to kind of like, and it creates a monthly analysis report, all that good stuff of anything new. You can set up all your tagging. But that's one use case, but there's so many different things with like, you think of a software engineer, like, AWS, like all these other pieces, or third parties, that you use. You can use it to create just tools for yourself. So yes, we use it to build products for customers, but I've also built out almost an equal amount of internal tools for us to manage the scales that things are, getting
Building
to
out. Yeah.
to analyze. So
Andrew, I think you're going to say something a second ago.
No, are you in a kitchen? I don't know what it is, PK and a sound. There's definitely a kitchen near you.
Yeah, there's a kitchen area.
Yeah. So getting a little bit away from like deep in the weeds, like technical components, like, so I'm curious to know, like, are there other models that you use? Again, I know like you guys are a straight up, Claude shop when it comes to coding and whatnot. Do you use other models, whether it's personal, business, like outside of coding, or do you find that you kind of live in the Anthropic world, like as a result?
no, that's actually a really good question and a point that I didn't mention. I would say, Claude Code Anthropic is for the dev stuff, right? We have team or business plan for Chat GPT. I mean, hundreds. Like I use it all day, every day. Managing all sorts of stuff, whether it's tech, it's not like even personal. Like there's just so many things. Like it's probably I have Claude and Anthropic on one side that's really more the engineering dev stuff.
Mm-hmm.
GPT for all the other things. So it's helping clean up emails or writing some summaries that were like for product and feature releases. The interesting point that I want to make too, so sometimes I'll have ChatGPT kind of like like proof of concept or give some examples of a tech thing I want. And then you can feed it to Anthropic or whatever, and it's like, yeah, but no. But there's some times that I've been able to like, whichever LLM can't figure out what the heck, we're trying to do, I'll feed it to another one and say, like, tell me what it's doing wrong. Like, you know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
I pair them again, and, even for, the other part I mentioned is like for just like design, not in the sense of like web, but database design is a good one, or like table schemas and that type of stuff. I like to have, I basically will put it into ChatGPT and Anthropic's like Claude Code like desktop, not the CLI thing for developing, but and just kind of go back and forth and see which one can maybe point out some flaws or maybe better ways to design before it even gets to like the software level. So a lot of it too is just that piece. But yeah, I would say I don't use or haven't used much Google's models.
So it's interesting. I am finding. So I actually signed up for. I literally logged into Claude for like the first time ever the other week because everybody kept telling me it was better at writing than any of the other models. So I was like, all right, we'll give it a spin.
We had
1,000%.
We had this one project where we started out with GPT or Chat GPT, and this is all behind the scenes, like custom software that calls, say Chat GPT. I forget, I think it was 4.0 at the time. But what's interesting is Claude with their latest models, their Opus 4.1, for this particular use case that is like kind of writing, copywriting type stuff. It was actually the responses are way better with the same system prompting because we have the ability for them to like edit the system prompt and really engineer that stuff without needing a developer like myself.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's interesting. And it's like they keep, one goes above the other than the other, so.
Well, interestingly enough, I used Gemini recently, and I literally gave the task to Gemini, GPT, and Claude. For my personal taste, Gemini was the better output from a writing perspective. I mean, image generation. I mean, I can't wait to see. I mean, as we were talking before the show came on, Gemini 3 did come out a couple hours ago. And I'm really interested to see, if that has even greater impacts on their image generation. But they're killing everybody, in my opinion, when it comes to image generation.
I agree. Yeah.
And to your point, it has a context window of 1,000,000 So Gemini 3 is still at 1,000,000 tokens. So no change from the context window, but still, I mean, 4x, what some of the other models.
Yeah, well, it's on my list. So they released their kind of like version. I forget. I don't know if it's just called Gemini CLI. It's same. It's the comparison, but using their models instead of like. Let me say that again. So there's Claude Code, right? That uses Anthropic's models. Well, Gemini has a command line dev tool too that uses their models, right? Google's models. I've not tried that yet. I've watched a decent bit of videos, and one of the ways I kind of stay up to date is like part of my daily routine every morning on the iPad. Like I'll watch just so many different for about 30 minutes. Usually it's not watching, it's listening, but like on different tools and then comparing different things. But it's kind of one of the ways I've been able to kind of keep a pulse on some of the latest thing and greatest stuff. And there's some folks I like to follow because I feel like they've got a good grasp on things. So because once I get to
who do you follow? Actually,
I was gonna say, can you plug some?
Yeah, there's this guy that
because there is so much noise, like it hurts my head.
I think AI Jason is one of them.
I think it's
because I think one of the struggles for everybody out there right now is like there's a lot of vaporware still, which keeps people not knowing, and there's just general fatigue, right? And it's so interesting to me. It's I've said this a few times. This is the very first like technology like this where everybody's in the conversation, from CFOs to line level analysts to engineers. Like when Mace and I spoke at NEMBC earlier this fall, I asked the room, I said, how many of you are in IT or in technology? And I don't know, there's maybe 100, 200 people in the room, and 2 people raised their hands. So every single other person that was in the room was in ops and sales. And we were talking about AI, right? Which is like, so it is such a unusual thing. And one of the things is like, everybody expects like, oh, they're going to be an AI expert. And it's like, well, no, you have a full-time job. Like even you, who's, I mean,
I keep up on it, and that's what I do for 10 hours a day. Like it's
right. I mean, this is your, yeah. So I think the expectation also on people is a little bit heavy. Now, I think the next generation, right? Like my kids, there's no question. Like, I mean, they spend way more time with it. What are you laughing at?
I was just thinking of the word boomer.
Oh. Do you know the boomer joke, Shawn?
No, I don't think so. I just
your partner in crime, Mace. Anytime I say anything wrong or I make a mistake or I forget something, he calls me a fucking boomer. There you go, Mace. PK almost got it in there. Apparently having kids makes me a boomer. Gen Alpha or whatever he is over here. What's the new one? Gen Phoenix or something? I heard.
I have not seen that one.
Huh?
I haven't seen the Phoenix one.
I thought I heard something about kids who were born during the pandemic. They were calling them Gen Phoenix.
Rising from the ashes of the COVID.
I don't even know where we were going. No, but I think kids today who are like deep in AI and are starting to use it and are getting exposure, to all of the different, tools that are out there. Like, I mean, there's no question. Like, they're going to have a leg up comparatively to, a boomer like me who has a full-time job and, kids and a wife and, all the other things that are going on. I'm glad I'm making PK laugh so much today.
Andrew, I'm sure your kids use stuff, tools. So I'm sure like they're just growing up natively. Like,
yeah, That's how they study. I mean, that's how they study. I mean, it really is.
Right.
Like my son, I forget what the tool is because he's the one who found it. He takes photos of all of his class notes, and they don't really have textbooks anymore, so he takes like screenshots, and he'll upload them into this tool, and it creates like lesson plans and quizzes, and so it actually teaches him like whatever it is. So like if he's got a class, and he's got some where the teacher sucks, he's coming home and he's just feeding all of that information into a model, and he'll tell you like it's a way better teacher than, sorry for any teachers watching this, but he says it's a far better teacher than what he's getting in school. And I think there's probably a move in education for it to go that direction anyways, because when you have a classroom of 20, 30 kids, everybody learns a little bit differently. And
Yeah,
there's
you
only
personalize the education.
Yeah. So now you're going to get, I mean, personalized education, that can be accessed at any point in time. So PK, do you remember Jason Smith's question last week for Shawn? Because I don't. Whoa, what just happened?
I do not.
Well, there you go.
Shoot.
If only Jason was watching and could drop it in the chat. But my camera's going all sorts of wonky on me. Okay, so
Should we try to figure this out?
Normally Mace is the one who covers us on this because he's the one. He's the one who actually has a memory. I don't know what PK's problem is, because
You're rubbing off on me.
You're the youngest, so you should be able to remember these things.
I just send the memes.
You just send the memes. That's true. I wake up in the morning, Shawn, and I always have like at least 3 Instagram memes sitting in my text messages. And the funny thing is Mace just ignores all of them. Mace never.
No.
Never.
That's because I send him directly to his DM. I don't think I've done that to you, so we don't have a DM going on. But I send him.
Then why do you send? You're sending the same meme to him twice?
No, the ones I put in the chat are more relatable to both parties.
Whole, like, system.
Well, I want to know, what is it? I want to understand what Instagram meme is relatable to Chris and not me.
That's
like,
that's an offline chat. That's an offline chat. That's an offline chat.
Offline chat. All right, folks. They must be incredibly inappropriate. Okay, so Shawn, we failed here on this to remember what Jason's question was from last week. But I need you. So everybody always comes up with the question that we ask the next episode. And our next guest, hopefully Jim's not watching, because how do you pronounce Jim's last name, PK? Do you know? From Lodestar?
Oh, I don't know. Actually, I'm talking to him in 2 hours, but I don't know how to say his name.
Paulino?
Yeah, I think you got it.
So do you know Lodestar, Shawn?
Familiar, yeah.
All right. Do you have any question you want to ask? You want to ask it's the founder, right?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Man.
Oh, I was trying to remember. Like, we did something long time ago, or we're looking at something with them. I mean, I'm curious, like, for anyone, but like, I have my perspective on all the AI and stuff, but I'd be curious, since they're a tech company too, like, how are they, have they started, did they use any of it? Like, have they found, it useful? That's what I'm really curious, because I kind of have my purview, of things and what I've seen, but I'm curious, what other companies, like, have they implemented it yet, or like in any sort of way, even if it's just to build internal tools. I'm very curious across the board, not just them, but
there you go. So PK, I actually put it in the spreadsheet this time, so you guys can reference it, because I actually will not. We have no episode next week because it's Thanksgiving week, and Andrew will be no internet for 7 days We're gonna be interested to see how this happens. So PK, don't send me any memes. You're on mute. Just how I like you.
I was gonna I was gonna say I don't see the question you dropped in, but we can talk about that after.
So I will not be here the week following because that is mortgage bar camp. So anyone who doesn't know about mortgage bar camp, go check out Dan Green's LinkedIn profile. It is in lovely Cincinnati, Ohio. Where else would you rather be on December 2nd? It's probably a lot of places you'd rather be, like Charleston, South Carolina. So that should be a fun time. But I will be back in 3 weeks for Lori Helms from Lorma. So Shawn, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you making the time, because I know you've got a ton going on your end. And best of luck with everything you guys are doing, man.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you here in a couple of weeks.